everyone. Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast. Today we have Tracy Crossley, who is a behavioral relationship expert and podcast host. And she specializes in treating individuals with unhealthy dating and relationship patterns. She treats clients dealing with a wide range of behavioral issues, such as insecure attachment. And I have her book here, Overcoming Insecure Attachment, and really just breaking the cycle of narcissism, destructive self-talk, and more. Welcome to the EO Wonder podcast, Tracy.
Thank you for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. So today, I'd love for everyone to understand your origin story. How did you get here as a behavioral relationship expert?
Well, it's been a very long path. I will try to condense it and let you know, it's one of those things where in 2008, I found myself without a job. I had been a vice president in an advertising agency, and it was based on recruitment advertising, which in 2008, we didn't need recruitment advertising. So at that point, I had read a book and I thought it was a pretty interesting book as far as it was relevant to my personal life. And I decided to reach out to the author of the book and ended up in her office, met her partner, was doing sales and marketing for their programs. And they had a couple different programs. One of the programs was about female empowerment. Another one was about coaching and learning to be a coach. And they said, "We want you to be a coach." And I said, "No, I don't want to be a coach." And they said, "Yes, you want to be a coach." And so I didn't want to be a coach because I thought, how am I going to make money, especially in 2008, right? Yeah. So basically,
For everyone who, I guess, I don't know, aspiring entrepreneurs who don't know about 2008, maybe you can describe what was happening in 2008.
Yeah, sorry about that. Basically, the economy fell apart and we went into a recession. And with that, the job market tanked. And yeah, working with an advertising agency that was basically focused on anything, advertising to get jobs. So
And
yeah,
recruitment, right? Like
yeah.
no one had jobs to.
No. So yeah, so basically 2008 kind of set everything in motion. And I ended up being a coach because they kept prodding me and prodding me to do it. And I thought, okay, fine. And I was just a natural at it from what everybody told me. And it was just a very interesting path because I think I fought it most of the time because I would also take on other jobs, but I'd still be coaching people. And there were times like at one point, I think it was in 2010 or maybe 2011, I ended up working with somebody as their head of marketing for a Facebook game. Facebook games were really popular back then. Yeah. So, and I thought, okay, I'm just going to take this on and, forget the coaching, but I kept coaching. And so part of how I ended up with the insecure attachment label is I realized in my own life that there were certain things at play. Like I always had anxiety, no matter what I was doing, no matter if I was in corporate, if I was working on my own, didn't matter. It was always a part of me. In fact, at one point, I didn't want to have emotions at all. I wanted to just be, I just wanted to be logical. I didn't want them getting in the way. My personal life was a total train wreck. And that was really, the cue to me that there's something going on. I'm the common denominator and I'm having these kind of issues. And I had been working with people who had dysfunctional relationships. It was really interesting. I mentioned this because I didn't initially put out like my sign saying, "Hey, I want to work with you if you have a dysfunctional relationship." But that's really who showed up to work with me when I started out. And over time, you realize, hey, there's a commonality among everybody who's coming, including myself. And I discovered attachment theory. And pretty much from there, that was really the story of it just growing and me getting to a point of wanting emotional well-being to not have anxiety. Therapy didn't do anything for me. There were other things I tried, and it was really learning on my own path and getting some feedback from what I already knew from the coaching I had been trained in.
And in your bio, you talk about how you have ontological coaching. What is ontological coaching?
It's sort of like it covers everything. And what I mean by that, it's a mind, body, soul. And they kind of bring in all sorts of other stuff, including NLP. I'm trying to remember, it's been so many years. NLP, and they bring in, I want to say it's not astrology, but they bring in all these other avenues, psychology, somatics, all sorts of other things that really made it very, I want to say, full body. Like it's just all about the whole being. And so that's a little different than when you walk into a session with a coach who you're not doing a deep dive inside, but this is really a deep dive inside. It's not therapy. I think it's a lot stronger than therapy in terms of what I've experienced myself. So I guess that's the best way I could describe it.
Yeah, so ontology is also one of those branches of metaphysics, which from what I understand, it's really understanding the human being. So with NLP, which is what neuro linguistic
Linguistic.
programming,
Mhm.
and also psychology, that definitely helps you with helping people with insecure attachment. But maybe you can describe for our audience, what is insecure attachment?
Sure. So in the late 1960s, Dr. John Bowlby came up with attachment theory after observing infants, I want to say for about 20 years, because there were other theories before his that kind of played into it. And he noticed, or his whole thing was, how do we come into this world? Do we come into this world and we just need things and, to be fed, to be loved, to have a shelter, basically? And what he discovered was there is an attachment that you form to your initial caregiver. And so there's either insecure or secure attachment. So secure attachment would be, I feel a sense of trust. I feel relaxed. I know that this mom or dad, whoever it is always going to be there. Usually it's mom. And then insecure attachment was, there isn't that. There is either a parent who's inconsistent, you could have a parent who's abusive, you could have a parent who actually is overprotective. Anything that leads to an inconsistency in the parenting is how you've been conditioned. This is our conditioning. And what happened from there was Dr. Mary Ainsworth, who was his assistant, she did something in the early 70s called the strange experiment, where they would have a stranger come in a room, mom come in a room, and the child in a room. And then the child was about 18 months old. And they tested out different reactions, whether the mom would leave and the stranger would stay, or the mom, was there with the child, what happened when she came back. So it was like all these moments that they were gauging on the reaction of the child. And you either had a child that was anxious or ambivalent or avoidant. That was pretty much what the three original styles were. But since then, there's been a lot of work done, a lot of theories that have come from that, and so many different styles. And, for me, I just focus on three of them. I mean, mine is anxious and anxious avoidant and avoidant. And that's just because that's what I find at the base of all of the styles is really those three things are going on.
So anxious, ambivalent, and avoidant.
We're the original ones. Yes.
Wow, that's a lot. And it probably, so a lot of the problems that we have start in childhood.
Everything, everything.
Yeah.
I believe everything does, because it sets a foundation. Imagine you're a child and you are getting feedback from your initial caregivers, right? You're a little sponge. You are soaking that up. You don't know any better. You're not judging, hey, mom's crazy, or dad, is a workaholic, or you're not judging it that way. So you get that feedback. You also get feedback from society. You also get feedback based on your own actions and what comes from that. And so you form a worldview and you form a view of yourself. So I'll give you an example. You become, let's say, an overperformer because the only time you got attention was perhaps when you brought home an A, or you did something in sports, or, you did some achievement, or maybe you cleaned the house, whatever it happened to be. And that's just an example, because there's so many different things. There's people pleasing, perfectionism, all of those things get wrapped up in there, because you get an idea that's how you get love and attention.
Right. And then if you do that continuously, it'll, from a child, you'll take that to the workforce, you'll take that to your family, right? Because life is a hologram. So whatever you do here, it'll also expand into your whole world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what is one way that people can up their EQ, their emotional intelligence around this?
So I would say, and this is the first step with anything, And I'm going to say it, and it's going to sound like everybody has said this, but it's different. Awareness matters. Awareness, not just of situations out here. You have to become aware of your emotions, because if you're not aware of your emotions, you have no map to go with. You cannot raise your EQ. And what I mean by that is not just paying attention to your reactions, because we have reactive emotions and then we have real emotions. Like anger is a reactive emotion. That is in reaction to either something you're thinking or something happening outside of you. And you can get angry about things that aren't even happening, right? You could think about things in the past and get very pissed off. So but that's a reaction. Crying is a reaction. So you have things that will, let's say, elicit that emotion, but then you want to get deeper. You want to go, what is going on inside of me that's creating this? Because I obviously have some kind of meaning attached to what's happening now or what happened in the past, and it's causing me to have a reaction. So you want to get deeper and you want to know what your deeper emotions are, because managing your emotions is key to EQ. But you have to, again, you have to become aware. You can't just assume, and you have to see yourself in a situation and really see what you do. A lot of times we don't see ourselves as we are.
How should we see ourselves as we are? You mean like our true self or our soul, or what do you mean?
I'll give you an example. So let's say that in a personal situation, you're out on a date. A lot of times people put on what I like to call a dating face, literally a dating face. So I go out and I'm on autopilot, because most of our thoughts, most of our actions are on autopilot. But when you are sitting across from someone and you're talking to them and you take your focus off of them for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and you pay attention to, what am I actually thinking right now? And what is coming out of my mouth? And this is very difficult for most people to do, because everybody is so tied into everybody else. But when you take that focus off, the other person's not going to notice. They're not going to notice that you take a pause. They're not going to notice that you're going, oh, wow, look at me. I am doing what I always do. I have my dating face on. I'm just saying things to get a second date, instead of, how do I really feel right now? What do I really want to say right now? And most of us, we don't do that in certain situations. I'm talking about dating because that's difficult. Or let's say you're meeting with a client, that's difficult. That's difficult for most people because we have a shtick, we have a strategy. This is what we're doing. This is how we show up. But you're not really seeing who you really are underneath that. And you're not connected to yourself. You're not connected to what your actual intention is. You have a thought intention, well, I want to get the deal, or I want this person to like me. But you're not being real. To get those things, often we're doing strategies that have nothing to do with how we really feel, who we really are. Thank you, imposter syndrome, because that's what ends up happening. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So the first step is awareness. So how do you jog yourself? I know how some people have some techniques, like they'll have like a rubber band and like hit themselves or something. Like, do you have any technique to like, hey, wake up?
I have a few things that I do, tell people initially. One of them is set an alarm 3 times a day. And what you want to do is close your eyes, be in a quiet place. You can even be at your desk. It doesn't matter, because it's really a 30-second exercise. Close your eyes, start with your feet, do a body scan. Okay. As you do a body scan, what you're doing is you're connecting to yourself. Most of us don't realize we don't give ourselves attention. We want attention from everything and everybody else. So when you start to give yourself attention, this is actually how you build true value and true confidence. There is no other way around it, because if you are disconnected, you're like a walking head in society. So this is why I have people do this exercise, is to get in their body. So when you start from your feet, you go up your legs, you go up your whole body, right? What you're looking for are places of pain, places of tension. A lot of us do not sit in comfortable positions. Like, you can check your leg and you're like, oh my God, my leg's asleep. I mean,
It's numb.
we don't,
Like
yeah,
when you get up,
yeah.
you're like, I can barely walk. Like, what the?
Uh-huh.
True. I've experienced that.
Yeah. But we have no connection to our body. So when you do that, that's just the first step, is making a connection. Okay. And it's a 30-second exercise. There's other steps you add onto it that turn it into much longer than a 30-second exercise. So, but I always think in having worked with people for 15 years, it just takes a while to even get that, because some people will be totally numb in their body. They'll go, I don't feel anything. They won't even feel like the pain of, sitting in a funny position. And often when you tell people to get comfortable, they in their head are getting comfortable, but they're not paying attention to their body to get comfortable. So we are a whole being inside of our bodies. That's why it's important. But that's one of the first things I ask people to do, is to set that alarm.
So one of the questions that someone had asked the Dalai Lama was, how can I prevent imposter syndrome? And he didn't understand what imposter syndrome was. His translators had to just like tell them, like, what is imposter? So how can you describe what is imposter syndrome?
Imposter syndrome is basically, at some point along the way in our life, we were told who we really were was not of value. Okay. And so we developed certain techniques to live, like I was talking about with perfectionism or people pleasing. We're doing things that we think are what other people will accept about us. So if I'm successful, you're going to accept me, right? Which is kind of interesting because a lot of people don't accept, successful females. But besides that, it's really interesting. We just do this unconsciously from childhood forward. And then by the time you get a job or even getting into a relationship, a lot of people have trouble getting into a relationship because they built this confident looking self. But then the closer you get, and then you might find out that that's not really who I am, because I've basically become, let's say, a straight A student, or I have a PhD or whatever I have. That looks great. But if you get too close to me, you might find out that that's just for show and I don't really represent that. And so that's a very anxious place for people to live. But I think to some degree, most people have imposter syndrome, because most of us didn't have parents who were saying, no, it's okay that you are this way, whatever the way that is. Usually we were corrected. No, you need to be different, or stop annoying me, or you're too loud, or you're too quiet, or you're too this, or you're too that. So we pick up those cues and we think other people are going to judge us. Because I know when I used to feel that way, I would feel like the whole world was going to cave in. I would feel like, oh my God, they're going to just find out that I'm worthless. Why would they give me a job with a title? Why would they pay me this? Why would, it's all of those things are just in the back of your mind all the time, asking the why, because you don't really feel you deserve it. Because again, you're not really being yourself. You're being who you think others want you to be.
So when you do have that imposter syndrome, what is one, well, I'm sure that there are many steps because you teach and coach about this. What is one thing that someone can do? Do they first have to start with a definition of imposter syndrome? Because I was speaking at a college, recently, an art college, and they were just like, what do I do about imposter syndrome? And I really didn't know how to answer that. So what
Mm-hmm.
would you do? How would you answer that question?
So one of the things that I would say when it comes to imposter syndrome is, first of all, to understand that you're okay. And I think that's hard for most of us to do. In other words, it's not that you have to dismantle your whole life. What you have to start doing is being honest. And that's a difficult step. I say these things and people think, oh, no big deal. No, it is a big deal. Because to be honest means you're taking a risk, because most of us aren't honest. We will talk ourselves in and out of things and think we're honest. But to be honest, in other words, if somebody is saying something to you and you have something caught in your throat, right, that you really want to say, and it doesn't mean that it's a bad thing, it's just a truthful thing, but you may not have vetted it with the rest of the world. Well, can I say this? What do you think? They haven't done that yet, right? So they have this stuck in their throat and they should just say it. And that is hard for people to do. Again, this doesn't mean you become tactless. This doesn't mean you start criticizing other people. It doesn't mean you become a jerk. What it means is you say something like, I realize I want to say this, whether it's right or wrong. This is what I'm thinking or feeling or believing, wherever it's coming from.
So then what?
Yeah. Well, one of the biggest, the stuff I talk about is very deep, and I say it's deep because it's not an easy 1, 2, 3 thing. So I'll give you another example of something else that comes next, which would be understanding what you have attachment to. So most of us have attachment to how we come across, how we look. We think we control how other people see us. We have an attachment to a goal, let's say, of earning money, of a new title, of being a business owner, being successful, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So you have to let go of your attachment to the result because you don't control that. All you can do is participate by creating, by showing up and doing whatever it is that you want to do to get to the goal without being attached to it. Because a lot of us feel we'll be devastated if we don't, or we'll lose everything if we don't hit that goal in the way that we picture it in our head. And oftentimes you just don't have that sort of control. You can't control everything in your environment. You can control yourself. And so I always say, working on the state of non-attachment, to me, I mean, that is one thing that I would say I do probably about 90% of the time in my life, even with my goals. That doesn't mean I don't have goals. It means that the way I work toward a goal is way more creative and allows me to have a lot more opportunities show up, because you often are not noticing the opportunities that are there when you're very single-minded about reaching a goal. And when you put your whole self, like your self-worth, on that goal, that is attachment and that is insecurity and that is
Oh,
painful.
got it. Got it. And there are also sometimes too, these other people, I'm an entrepreneur coach as well. And some entrepreneur women that I coach say that they don't even want the relationship because they're just like, I'm already way past my prime, or like, it's never going to happen to me. I've already gone through a divorce. And that's also a different type of non-attachment because, like you said, they haven't really told the truth when deep down inside, they really want a partner and they really want a close-knit family. And you
Oh,
and
I
you can and
agree.
you can zero in on that too, right? You probably see right through it.
I do. I see right through a lot of things. I see behavior and I can see at its core what's causing it because it's an insecurity. I was interviewing somebody once on my podcast who is she's written a lot of books and stuff, and she decided that she wanted to be single for the rest of her life. And that, she wanted to live with other women and kind of like a Golden Girls, which was a TV show on a long time ago,
Right.
right? It's like that group. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting that she's given up. And it's not a woohoo, that's a great thing because I know physiologically, all of us desire partnership. I mean, I'm on my second marriage. I got remarried in my early 50s. So imagine I got divorced at 30. So I had a lot of those years where I thought, I don't know, I'm raising my kids and all sorts of things. And you can tell yourself any kind of story you want, and it will fit that narrative that comes from fear. And these are all fear-based ideas. Insecure attachment is completely a fear-based place to live in, and you don't feel secure, and that goes all over your life.
I was interviewing another entrepreneur on the podcast, and she talked about how because her father wasn't there in her life, she feels really bad when someone resigns from her company
Mhm.
because she has these abandonment issues, and because she it's hard, right? But when you once you have this awareness, you can do something about it.
Yes, and you can be aware and you can go into denial still, but I will tell you that things will happen that will bring you back to awareness. So, because
Ah,
once I think you're aware, it's really hard not to be. I've done that where, okay, I'm aware of certain things, but I'm going to just ignore that and I'm going to go about my life. But you realize as you're going through the same situations, let's say you've been repeating your whole life, that, oh my God, I'm doing the same thing again. What am I doing? And you realize you're the common denominator. And once you do that and you make a commitment to yourself, because a lot of us can go, okay, I can manage my pain. I can manage this. It's familiar. I know it. True change, true transformation, you don't know it. You may dream of it, but to actually embody it and live that way and have that emotional freedom, which frees you in all areas of your life, and then you end up making choices that aren't fear based. It's like, oh, that sounds wonderful, but I don't know. This is working for me. as a leader, a female leader too. Oh yeah, well, this is working for me. I know how to do this.
Or it goes back to that autopilot you were talking about earlier.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. So what type of advice would you give a woman entrepreneur in their business? Because we are, I mean, I don't know whether this is generalization, we are more emotional, and we do also want relationships. What type of advice would you give us?
Are we talking about somebody who's married, single? Does it matter?
Yeah, anyone.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, as a female entrepreneur, the biggest problem that we have, and this is all females really in any leadership position, self-doubt. We doubt ourselves. And a lot of us feel like the map we have in front of us, oh gosh, I don't want to show I have any weakness because that's another issue. I don't want to show I have any weakness because we feel there's a whole crowd of people ready to judge us, including ourselves, right? So what you have to do is you really have to take yourself in hand and go, okay, I have self-doubt. Can I challenge the self-doubt? Right? Can I do things without, let's say, asking 50 people if they think this is okay? Can I break out of how I usually do things in autopilot? You have to, first of all, get clear on what you're willing to commit to, because most of us, we say these things, but I just look at, there are patterns that women have taken to get to the point of success that they have. And regardless of what it costs them, they will continue to do it because it's what they know. So it's, can I go into the unknown? Will I allow myself to go into the unknown? Because I want bigger and better. And to me, if I can lead from 100% confidence, meaning I feel confidence because I breathe, then I can do something. And so that's really, we help women to do that in my business. It's really about working with, what are your insecurities, and getting rid of the insecurities. And the best way, of course, is, oh, you can say, just take action, just do the opposite. But that's not really going to break the patterns and get to those negative beliefs that you have in the first place. Because to get to your negative beliefs and really see how they take over your whole life, you want to be able to break them down. And so I'll give you, if I have time,
Oh,
which I'm
please.
assuming,
Yes.
okay.
Lots of time.
So, okay. So I always try to be succinct when I'm on a podcast. So thank you. I basically would say to you, there's layers. Okay. So imagine a pyramid. And at the bottom is your belief. On top of it is a rule. On top of it's a story, pattern, evidence. Okay. And it goes from a loop from evidence at the top back down to the belief. So let's say, since we were talking about relationships, that you have a negative belief that says, I'm alone. Now, before I go further, a lot of times we have negative beliefs that are actually protective beliefs. You would have I'm alone as a protective belief because if you really look at your childhood and your, teenage years, adulthood, you will see that you feel safest when you're alone, whether you like it or not. Because if you had any kind of trauma or drama in your childhood environment, perhaps being in your room alone was the safest place for you to be.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have beliefs just to screw us up. Negative beliefs are really there to limit us, to keep us in the familiar. So that is a familiarity for a lot of us. I used to have that, like I'm alone. I had other wonderful negative beliefs too, but we don't have a belief that's not beneficial on some level. So any belief you have has a benefit. It may not be the benefit you want, but it's one about survival because of course this is physiological. It goes back to your limbic system, to your amygdala. That's the oldest part of your brain that controls a lot of this. That's where your subconscious is as well. So when it comes to this belief, I'm alone, what you have, and this is where you have to pay attention to the thoughts in your head and the things that you do. Okay. You'll have a rule. Okay. So let's say you are single and you have this I'm alone belief. You can be also in a relationship and have the I'm alone belief too. But let's say you're single. Okay. So you find you have a rule. Rules have verbs attached. The kind of verb that is the will not, or I should say will, won't, do, don't, can, can't. words like that. Those are verbs. And what you
Should,
find
shouldn't.
is exactly should, shouldn't, could, couldn't, would, wouldn't. I mean, you can go down the list, right? So anything you hear in your head. So this is what happens. You're driving along and maybe you're thinking about dating. And the first thing you hear in your head, well, I can't date people that are 4'2". I'm exaggerating, but you're saying something, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can do this. Like I can date, let's say you're a heterosexual female, I can date men that are over 5'10" and have a job and have this and have that, but I can't this. Okay. So now what you're seeing is this is where rules build limitations. And this is what's going on inside of you. Okay. So you have rules and then your story. So here's the rule. I can't date men that are 4'2". You go to the word because. Okay. So because starts a story. Because last time I dated somebody who was 4'2", this is what happened. And I was totally stuck and in love, and he dumped me because he was dating 20 other women. Okay. So you have that story and you just have to listen to the thoughts in your head, like pay attention. I am actually driving down the street and I am thinking about the guy that I dated that was 4'2" that I've never gotten over. And like you're thinking about him and you're realizing, oh my God, I have a story, right? So the next thing is your patterns. Okay. How do your patterns support the story, the rule, the belief, right? Well, basically that's what you act on. Your actual actions now are showing, hey, guess what? All of this is true. This is all true so far, right? So you will refuse. Somebody who's 4'2" asks you out, you're going to go, no, I can't date you. Okay. And then you're maybe only going to date like guys that are 5'10" and, have blue eyes and blue hair and, have, I don't know, just what other attributes that are probably like this little tiny checklist. Well, I should say big, long checklist that makes it like, very few characteristics are going to work for you. Okay. So maybe you won't go on dating apps because you also have a rule about dating apps. All of these things you make rules about, right? So your window gets smaller and smaller and smaller and you're acting it out. Well, guess what? All you're doing is providing evidence that your belief is true. So you get to the top of the pyramid where the evidence is. It's like all of these things have now built up evidence. Oh my God, it's true. I'm going to be alone. Instead of really being aware of those rules, the stories and patterns, because it's on autopilot. And you have to build the awareness that this is what's happening and you can do something, right? You can break a rule. Okay. I can date men that are 4'2". And whatever else you're telling yourself that you can't do, you can, or vice versa. And then your story. Is your story really true? Is your story maybe not? You can do something about that. And when it comes to your action, it's taking different action, going out with that 4'2" person, and whatever else you're telling yourself you can't.
Are there other, so it's belief, rule, story, action, evidence, right?
The
So that,
action is patterns, your
oh, action,
patterns,
action is patterns,
your patterns. Yeah,
your patterns. So, okay. Sorry, I'm just taking notes because
sure.
this is so, wonderful to be able to see sort of this framework that's arising because you could apply this in everything. So it doesn't even have to be dating. It could be
Right.
like hiring employees, or whatever. Right?
Yeah, you can. Because when you're looking at people, like you're going to hire somebody, when they talk, like when I listen to people talk, I know what their beliefs are. I can hear it. I can hear it when people hesitate about certain things. If you compliment somebody, if you are asking them a question and the way they answer it, you can tell when people are self-deprecating. I mean, there's just like so many clues that people give that, oh, okay. And then you could ask a question. So tell me, a little bit about whatever the topic is that you can already see that this person is either, feeling a lack of confidence or they're getting uncomfortable, which is a lack of confidence. They're getting uncomfortable or, they're getting lit up. Maybe they're sitting up straighter and you can tell, wow, that person feels really confident about whatever we're talking about.
Yeah, I can share an example when I was, grew up in Hawaii, dated a pro baseball player. I mean, we went to high school together, and then he cheated on me.
Hmm.
We were engaged, and so I just told myself, I'm never going to go out with a pro again, right? Like because this is what happened, right? And so I went to the complete opposite. I went to a nerd. Right. I mean, nerd, like
Hmm.
someone who went to Ivy
Hmm.
League school, right? You're just like, oh my gosh, like, but that's a belief too. You think that you're doing the right thing because you make this like generalization that all pro athletes will cheat on their wives, because that happened to me.
Hmm.
Is there any truth to any of the beliefs? Like, for instance, someone who is, abusing you, like hitting you or, I don't know. Is there any beliefs that where it does make sense to have a rule like, I'm not going to be with this person because I see that there's domestic violence in their background or something like that, that can help you with these
I
rules?
mean, you have to remember, so the way that we have beliefs in the first place is a physiological defense. Okay. So it's all about keeping you safe and keeping you in what's familiar. So familiar can be situations that are not ones you want. They may be untenable, but you'll find yourself attracted to them. And that's because you don't know what your belief is. But as far as like, okay, I can't date certain people, yeah, if somebody's violent, of course, you're not going to date them. If somebody, I'm sorry, not to put homeless people down, but somebody's homeless, you might go, you know what? I don't want to date somebody who's homeless. So, and there's specific reasons around that. And yet, everything else is open because it's always coming back to you and what you're doing. You're the common denominator, right? So, why would you be attracted to certain things in the first place? Well, you got to be curious about yourself and go, well, why am I attracted, to somebody who I don't know? I mean, like in your case, right? It's like, okay, I was attracted to this guy, and there were probably several reasons why you were attracted to him and the reasons he cheated. But then it's always, okay, so here you had a situation where he cheated. It's an opportunity to look at yourself and go, okay, what did I bring to the plate too? Right. Not saying that you want to, I don't
Mm.
want to say you're blaming yourself, never blame yourself, but it's where you can take responsibility in a situation that was like that so that okay, wait a minute, if I know I had a choice there, right? I know had a choice of how I was or what I paid attention to or how I communicated or anything like that, it empowers you rather than victimizes you. Because otherwise it's, oh, this happened to me. That doesn't help you. But if you can look at, well, wait a minute, I chose to be in the situation. I made other choices. So, maybe if I make different choices going forward, I'll have different results. And I could go out and date another professional athlete if I want to, as an example.
And I also see in my friends, like they will date the same type of person, like let's say they're like the womanizer, the person who's like the bad boy. Is that the same thing where because they're familiar with that type of person and they fall back on it and they're on autopilot or?
Yeah, the subconscious is a wonderful thing. It's really controlling most of this. Consciously, as a conscious aware adult, of course, you're like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Right. But that old subconscious kicks in there. And usually when you do things like that, it's reminding you of what you didn't get as a child from an adult in your environment, probably mom or dad. And we're repeating it with the idea that either we're going to get what we wanted that we didn't get back then, because the feelings that are coming up remind us of those old feelings. There's familiar feelings in that. So a lot of times we meet somebody and we're like, oh my God, I feel like I've known this person. Okay, so not always a good thing because it's basically your subconscious is going, oh, this is familiar. We had this in childhood. This could be good, not good because it's happy, good because it's familiar. So, yeah.
Ah, and so could it also be that, you don't want to date people who are available, and you really deep down inside want to be alone?
Yeah, so most of us who cry about, and I used to do this, so I'm just putting myself out there too, about, oh, he's emotionally unavailable. Well, guess what? you have to be emotionally unavailable too. People that are emotionally available do not really hang out with emotionally unavailable people. Why? Who wants to work that hard? Nobody. Nobody. I'm not going to change somebody. I'm not going to get them to be available. It works for you because you have to, again, go back to childhood, to your emotionally unavailable parents or parent. And that is what sets the tone. You have been conditioned to feel a certain way by not getting your needs met or not getting, let's say, that emotional intimacy you could have with the parent. It doesn't mean, again, that you had to be traumatized as a child. It just means that you had parents that probably had no clue, that maybe they gave you shelter, they were nice to you, but that emotional closeness was missing. And so oftentimes we will keep picking people that are emotionally unavailable and think that it's them, but it's not. It's us too, because we have to see ourselves. You have to see how you avoid. Most of us have avoidant tendencies, right? I will cling to you as an example, like as an anxious style attachment, right? I will cling to you until you show interest in me. You're showing interest in me. You know what? This is kind of boring. I don't know what I am doing here. I'm not really digging this guy anymore. It was really fun, but I don't know. And you don't even know why. And it's again, that whole attachment. And I will share this one other thing really quick about that. So when you have these kind of insecurities and emotional unavailability, which is all tied in again to insecure attachment, you tend to not know this. And this is actually a psychological, I don't want to say theory, although I think it is a theory. It's from a study I had read a long time ago, and it made sense. And that was, if somebody likes you more than you like you think something's wrong with them. You like me too much. What's wrong with you? You don't even know me. How could you like me? And so the opposite is, somebody doesn't like you enough. You want to show them how wonderful you are. So you're going to do what it takes to make them like you. So those are, again, I deal with this all the time, dealing with people that have insecure attachment, because we don't really realize it's not the other person. It's still us. It's how much you like yourself, how much you accept yourself.
Wow, that is just so profound. So if there's a lot of women I know also in EO who, are going through divorces, they have kids and, you know, how can they work with you? How do they work with you?
Ah, yes. So there's a few different ways. It depends, first of all, if you're more inclined to just work on the personal or if you want to work on business and the personal. So if you want to just work on personal, we have a couple programs. We have a group program. It's called Mastery. I've had it for about 4 years, and we have people sign up for 6 months. And I would say in 6 months, you can see a lot of movement. Some people do it for a year. I have graduate programs that come after that. And then the other thing we offer to people just coming in is one-to-one coaching. I have coaches that are trained in this, have gone through this themselves. And so that's very helpful. And then on the more B2B side, I would call it, we work specifically with female leaders, and we work with them professionally and personally. And that's usually in a one-on-one coaching, consulting, mentoring situation. And then we also have team programs for sales teams, marketing teams, and management teams, because this goes into the marketplace. I'm writing a book right now called I can't even say the name, the Secure Female Leader. And in it, it talks about how insecure attachment does play a part in how most women lead, along with, we get into the OCEAN, which is the big 5 personality traits. And OCEAN that's an acronym for what those personality traits are. Anyways, and so we do a deep dive into that work on the B2B side. So it's just really, what is the burning desire? But I will tell you, no matter what you do, either one, you'll see changes all across the board in your entire life. It's just one thing affects another.
And you also have digital courses?
I do. I have digital courses. I have the 30-day emotional cleanse for healthier relationships, which is really, it's a pretty deep dive. It's self-directed because you're taking it yourself. And then I have the drama triangle, which I wouldn't say it's as deep a dive, but it definitely will give you a taste of how the drama triangle shows up in all of your relationships, because it shows up all across our society. And then the last one is manifesting my honey bun, which basically is how I manifested husband number 2. And I will tell you, I was a coach and doing this work for several years. And I kept going, God, I don't know why I'm single. I date, and until I took it seriously and I actually committed to, being on track to get in a serious relationship, it just didn't happen. I could fulfill, that whole belief rules. Oh yeah, I could just like fulfill that. So it was a 6-month journey to meet my husband. And in that, I wrote letters to him without knowing him. And my letters were not your normal letters of like, oh, we're going to be together and the birds are going to sing. It was like, some days were like, where the F are you? So I was like,
because he was real.
He was real.
He was real.
And I needed to be real. That was the other part. Like I knew that however long it would take, and I wrote the letters only for 2 months and he showed up, but I knew how long, I didn't put like, oh God, it has to happen in a year. It has to happen next month. I took all of that out and I just said, I'm going to use this as a growing process for me by being honest every day and having conversations. And yeah, those letters were very interesting because they ended up being kind of magical. Really, they did. It was just, when I met him, I didn't think, I'm like, I don't know. I want to just take a step back, because I was dating a lot of men at that time. And I was not a big dater. I didn't like to date. So just to tell you like the things I had to undo, I had to stop ghosting men, things like that. Yeah. So I put in the letters, things like, oh, it's Christmas and you're making those cinnamon rolls that we love. And I'm like talking about this stuff. And okay, so come to find out a few months after I meet my husband that every Christmas he makes cinnamon rolls.
No.
Mind you. Yeah. Mind you, I've never had cinnamon rolls on Christmas.
I love cinnamon rolls. Oh
See?
gosh. And he baked them. And
He
you
makes
just
them
wrote it
every year.
down.
I wrote it down. And this isn't even something I've had on Christmas. I don't know why I wrote it down. I just wrote it down. Yeah.
Did you center yourself first? Well, anyway, they should just take your program so that they can manifest their honey bun or their cinnamon bun. That's what you should do. Oh my gosh. So do you like cinnamon rolls now?
I do. I always liked them, but it was just never associated with Christmas. I don't know why I associated. There were so many other things I wrote that were like that too, where you're like, okay, this is really weird. Like I wanted him to live around the corner. And I live in a suburb of Los Angeles where people go, oh, there's not a lot of single people there. He ended up living less than a mile from me. Yep.
So you were walking your dogs together? Like, wow.
Yeah, that was crazy.
And so you were dating other people. You sort of recognized him. How did you finally know? After the cinnamon roll, like what?
It wasn't actually the letters. What it was, I was on Match.com and I, for the first time, had a profile that actually contained things that mattered rather than a list of things. Either, at times I'd have like a list of what I don't want in a guy, or, or I would just be talking about my hobbies, but instead I came from my heart when I wrote it out. So I met a lot of men. I was on Match.com and all these men, were showing up, and I was totally non-attached, and I would date people that I would usually reject because I wanted to be curious. I wanted to learn about myself. I wanted to learn, what is it that I'm actually attracted to? How does this work? So I got this letter from my husband one day, and he basically it was very different than a lot of the other letters. It was really like down to earth and sweet and just normal. And I thought, oh, this guy's interesting. And again, though, I didn't get excited. And then I met him and we ended up going on 3 dates in the first week, which is something I would normally have not done. But I was like, screw it. And I did. And then we just kept dating. And he was great because I was still not entirely available as much as I wanted to be. And he picked up on it. Like on our third date, he called me beforehand and he goes, I just want you to know, he goes, I'm getting, you're not really that comfortable with this. And he goes, I just want you to know that there is nothing that I'm going to push on you. Like if we end up friends, that's totally fine with me. I just really am enjoying getting to know you. And then I felt like, oh, I could breathe, right? And so we just kept going out and I kept saying, okay, there's not the intensity because I was used to all the intensity, needing all the intensity, but there was a feeling of I was smiling all the time. Like I think of him like, oh, he's so sweet or he's so nice. Like on our second date, we went out to dinner and this man took my to-go container and was like filling it for me. Okay. And I was like, I've never had a guy like fill my container for me. Like he just did things. He was just so sweet. And yeah, he was also very funny and very down to earth and just a really lovely man.
Oh, I know you're just lighting up as you're talking about and smiling like from ear to ear. Oh, that's so sweet. And so now that you have that formula, you can share it with the rest of the world, Right. But
Yeah.
but but you're right. You still have to have that intention that you want that person in your life and the awareness that you want that person and that you're willing to have that attention into that phase of your life, right? Because it does require attention.
Oh, it does. I had relationships, throughout the years, but it was really, Tracy, you're not going to hide out. You're not going to make a bunch of excuses and say it's this guy's doing this or this guy's doing that. It was really about being real with myself. It was hard. It was not easy because you make a commitment like that and a lot of us don't. A lot of us will say, "Oh yeah, I want to be in a serious relationship." But then none of our actions, none of all of our patterns are the opposite.
That's true. Right? Our actions are really what's telling like what we really want, right? That's what we're really choosing, right, from our actions. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So people can get in touch with you through your website?
Mhm. Yes, tracycrossley.com. And you can find my podcast there. You can find all my programs. All my social media handles are there as well.
Yeah, tell us about your 2 podcasts.
Sure. So I have Freedom from Attachment, and I've had that since 2015. I have over 700 episodes. So if anything I have said, yeah, resonates with you and you feel like you're in any kind of pain, just check out those episodes because literally it is a deep dive into so many topics that are around anything attachment related. And I also, inside of that, have an interview series called Moving On, where I will interview experts and people in different careers who have gone through, let's say, challenges in their life so that they can share. Because of course, that's always inspiring if you're going through something to hear how did this person make it out. So that's my one podcast. And the other podcast is called Earned Wisdom for Accomplished Female Leaders. And that is also a twofold where I have solo episodes where I'm talking about issues and things related to female leadership. And I'm also interviewing female leaders. In fact, my goal is to interview 100 of them this year. I think I'm up to like 25 so far. So, and it's a very interesting series that I feel like I'm doing because I'm learning a lot about the perspective a lot of female leaders have and where we need to grow still. So it's lovely.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I mean, I didn't realize that it's all these layers, right?
Yes.
Beliefs, rule, story, patterns, evidence, right? And it's like this circular thing, like that in itself was just really just mind blowing. So thank you so much for sharing. And everyone else who, please go to Tracy's website, listen to her podcast, or maybe even join. You still have your Facebook group or your
I do. It's a free
uh,
Facebook group. Sorry about that. It's also on the website, but it's free. It's called Overcoming Insecure Attachment. I have my book, Overcoming Insecure Attachment. And I don't know if I've missed anything.
and
When
when is
you,
your other book coming out?
I don't know. My agent is shopping it right now. So I'm hoping that a publisher picks it up in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully I will have a publishing date shortly after that, as far as it'll probably be in 2024, 2025, I'm sure.
So if you want to manifest your honey bun or get out of this drama triangle or figure out how to overcome insecure attachment, tracycrossley.com, everyone. It'll be in the show notes. Thank you
Yes,
so much for everything. And I wish you all the luck with your book and getting an agent. And I'd love to have you back after your book is published. And maybe we can talk more about being a secure female leader. What do you think?
that would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Kalika. I really appreciate you having me on today.
Awesome. Thank you for being such a great guest.
Absolutely.